let's talk about why we're here, Snapchat. And I want to start with asking that question of what is Snapchat, really just introducing the platform for a lot of us, but I promise we're going to level up pretty quickly. So what is Snapchat? It was originally created in 2012. And one of the bigger things about this whole entire ecosystem that is Snapchat is that there were many other apps that centered on pictures, right? The most prominent probably being Instagram in our heads right now. But Snapchat lets users communicate solely through pictures and videos. And I think that's what makes it truly unique. There really isn't a lot of text based unless it's overlaying on an existing image or existing video. And the other big thing that to note about Snapchat's rise to fame and rise to success is that it has been a real pioneer in the augmented reality space. You've probably seen these a million times where there's cute dog ears over someone's head, or there's something that isn't there in real life, aka augmented reality, right? And they've been a real pioneer in this space and has really elevated them as a company. And they've been growing substantially since their inception. But ultimately, it's a temporary and video sharing mobile app. And key word here is temporary. Most things on Snapchat aren't built to last. And that's what makes them a little bit more special, right? When you send something that's going to disappear, you might take a little bit more attention to it. And also, when you send something that might disappear, you might be more willing to send, specific photos, specific videos, or types of content as you react or document your life as you go forward. Originally, it's created by a company called Snap Inc. They still own it to this day, and they call it a camera company fundamentally, as what Snapchat is. And who's on Snapchat? Well, there's more than 240 million unique users every single day, according to the last report. And according to that same last report, Snapchat added 9 million daily active users since the first quarter of 2020. Truly, since the pandemic this year, Snapchat has only become more and more popular as people may be more siloed in their space, and sharing the photos and the environments that they exist in has definitely helped bring Snapchat up. So it's growing. It's ultimately growing, but it's also important to note that it skews very young, right? In 2019, which is the latest data I could pull on this, Snapchat reached 75% of all 13 to 34-year-olds in the United States. That is a crazy statistic. So if you want to think about Generation Z, you really can't do it without thinking about Snapchat, right? That means that Snapchat is reaching more 13 to 34-year-olds in the USA than Facebook, Messenger, and Instagram combined, which is pretty fascinating to see. And so since more than half of the US Generation Z exists on Snapchat, it begs the question, how do we incorporate our brand? How do we message to these people? Because there's no denying that Snapchat is a force that needs consideration, and a lot of that is for sure. And so also thinking about who's on Snapchat, just on like the habits of people that are on Snapchat, first and foremost, Snapchat is the sixth most popular messaging app worldwide. And so when you think about Snapchat, really think about it as one-to-one communication predominantly, because that's where it typically takes form. Of course, there's some other features, there's groups and there's Snap stories, and we'll get into all of that, but predominantly it's a messaging app, right? And it's the second most visited social media platform on a daily basis, which is pretty big to see. So of course, at the top is Facebook. It's the biggest platform, and people who have Facebook will log on to Facebook multiple times a day, right? That's what I'm saying here. And Snapchat is number two, right? So people who have Snapchat will actively open their Snapchats, generally speaking, up to maybe 30 times a day. I mean, it's pretty crazy. I think we see 46 on the chart right in front of us, which is pretty interesting to see. And that's actually the percentage, but I think the actual number I saw earlier was it's over 30 times a day, which is pretty interesting. I use Snapchat. I would say that I absolutely use it, click on it more than 30 times a day, especially as my friends and I are going back and forth over the news that is happening of the day. But that is what's really interesting. So not only are people logging on to Snapchat, they're consistently logging on to Snapchat. And that is a very interesting thing to note. For those of us that haven't downloaded it before, now is your time. You can download it in the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. I really encourage you to open Snapchat and play with it throughout this training. There's going to be some cool opportunities for you as we move forward. But let's walk through the basics. Like I said, some quick definitions of what's going on, because there's a couple symbols that are kind of funky the first time you look at Snapchat. So this is the first three that you'll typically see. And this is going to be in your what you would call our feed, right? And what we see at the top is a red, a purple, and a blue. And those colors are very important. So when things are red, they're going to be a photo. When things are purple, they're going to be a video. And when things are blue, it's going to be a chat. It's going to be, text-based communication essentially. And that's really important to know. And when these things are full, it means that you have not opened them yet. Once you click open or tap on the icon, you're going to have a specific amount of time, sometimes an infinite, but typically less than 10 seconds to view the message, whether it's a photo, a video, or a chat message. And once you have completed that viewing, then it's going to look hollow after the fact. That just means that it has been received. And one thing you'll know as you send other people Snapchats, you'll be able to see when they have opened the Snapchat, indicated by symbols just like this. So it's kind of like a read receipt, essentially. If it's empty, it means that it has been delivered, has been opened, or it's been read, depending if you're sending or receiving the message. Some other symbols that you might see, again, you see them in a different form. You saw that they were kind of arrows. They also take places as kind of rectangles, roughly speaking. And again, that same color structure applies here. Red are photos, purple are videos, and blue is chat. And then, of course, as we open and close these, those read receipts start to appear again. Some other ones that you might see, though, are these symbols. And this symbol essentially means that the snap was saved by the person that you sent it to. And typically speaking, in Snapchat, the ecosystem, you don't save other people's snaps as a general courtesy. Of course, there's many instances where you do. But if you choose to save somebody's snap that they sent you, for example, let's imagine that one of your family members sent you a snap and you thought it was very important and you wanted to keep it, you can screenshot it, right? So that way it's always going to exist on your phone. But that person is going to now receive a notification saying that you screenshotted that photo, that video, that message, etc. And it's kind of be like a reverse read receipt in that respect. So when you are trying to save other people's snaps that they've sent you, that will always initiate a trigger to them saying that someone has, essentially saved the photo, video, or chat. And an important thing to note for sure as we move along. For sure. There's some other symbols, as you can see. This is my feed. I've just pulled away the last names to not dox my friends a little too much. But you can start to see how this starts to transpire, right? So when we are sending things, we see them as arrows. So you see Ron, I sent a purple arrow, which means I sent him a video that he has not opened yet. Matt is a blue one, which is a chat that he has not opened yet. And then we see a couple, Victoria, Emily, Lacey, they have sent me Snapchats that I have not opened yet. You can tell because now it's more of a rectangle. And then below that, you see the ones that have been resent to me that I have opened, right? So very interesting to see how that kind of transpires. I think this makes a lot of sense. Let me know if it doesn't, but that's exactly what's going on with those specific symbols as it relates to sending and receiving snaps. Now, as you do this over time, there's going to be some other symbols that populate. And these are the ones that exist predominantly. There's a few more, but this is like 90% of the list. You got the yellow heart, the red heart, the sunglasses, the grimacing, the smirking, the blushing, and the fire. What do these symbols mean? Well, that's why we're here in this training, and I'm here to tell you. So first and foremost, the yellow heart, it means if you are snapping back and forth, that you are best friends, that you hold each other in high esteem, essentially, in the sense that you are constantly sending each other snaps. The red heart means that you've been best friends for 2 weeks. Which means that you not only have been the number one person that you sent the snap to. A good way to think about it is like a relationship along a lot of the time, where you're snapping somebody, they're snapping you back, you're texting someone, they're texting you back. If this relationship buds past 2 weeks, that yellow heart becomes a red heart, and it stays red as long as you two remain best friends. Next is sunglasses. This means that you have the same friends, that you're in the same ecosystem. Grimacing means you share a best friend. Smirking, which is the fun one to kind of see, is that they snap you actually more than you snap them. And that's pretty interesting to note. The next big one is blushing. Blushing means that you are best friends, but you're not your number one best friend. So you can only have that yellow red heart with one person at a time. And if the other people aren't that number one spot, then they generally will take the form of a blushing face. The next one is fire. Fire means that you're on a Snapchat streak. If you send someone a snap and they send you a snap back within a 24-hour increment for 3 days in a row, it's going to initiate what we call a Snapchat streak. Now, the Snapchat streak can exist in perpetuity, theoretically, as long as you are both able to snap each other at least once within a 24-hour period, which is why my Snapchat streak is 1,150 something days, which means I've literally snapped this person and they've snapped me back one day every day for, roughly speaking, about a little over 3 years. So it's pretty interesting to see how high these streaks get. But as it's always noted, as a fire emoji, and then the number will be associated with the day that you're on of a streak. If you make it all the way to 100, there's actually a special snap streak that says 100, as you can see right there. And that's pretty fun to see. And just something to note, most people won't make it to 100 days on a Snapchat streak. Again, we'll walk through some strategy and why we'd even do this in the first place and all that good stuff. But first, we're just kind of figuring out this whole platform that is Snapchat. So the next thing that I want to point out is really the front page, so to speak. When you open Snapchat, your camera opens up, and this is the menu screen that you're going to see, right? And there's a whole bunch of options there. And of course, we can see these on the presentation for all of us, but there's a couple ones that I think are pretty important. First and foremost, it's the one in the circle, the big circle in the bottom center, which is how we actually capture the photo or the video. If we tap it once, it's going to take a picture. If we press and hold it, it's going to create a video, and it'll keep making a video until we release it. Some other cool things that exist are in your top right-hand corner, where you see reverse camera, flash on, off, night mode. Those are all very relevant as to kind of what you're trying to capture with your Snapchat. Of course, reverse camera, I'm going outwards right now, but I could flip that around and go selfie mode if I wanted to, turn the flash on and off, etc. And of course, night mode, which is helpful at night. Surprise. And then, of course, there's some other things. And the bigger cool things that I wanted to point out are that there are two options right next to that center main one with the capture photo video. On the left, you have view memories, and on the right, you have view lenses and filters. Now that lenses and filters is going to be an incredible opportunity that we're going to walk through in my cell phone. So we're going to hold off for now, but that's exactly how we start applying those augmented reality filters and lenses and cool opportunities that exist. The other big thing that we're able to do is if we go just one level below, and it's the bottom menu bar, so it's below the big circle in the middle now, we have the option to, on the right, which is view stories, and on the left, we have the option to view receive snaps. And so going back just a couple slides, this is actually the space where we're going to be viewing our received snaps, right? And if we just swipe over to the right to that middle center, we're going to be right here in our main center interface, where now we can click some other opportunities. The other cool things that exist at the main menu bar, just kind of branching out now, all the way in the bottom left-hand corner is View Snap Map. The Snap Map is really cool. For those of us that have it enabled, it'll show you where your friends are on a map anywhere in the world. Pretty fun to see. And again, we'll walk through that on my phone. And then the other big opportunity is actually this Discover button in the bottom right-hand corner. In the bottom right-hand corner, Discover allows you to find people, friends, great events that are happening on Snapchat, and good stories as well. Great content from many different organizations and companies, that's for sure. But again, we'll walk through that Discover tab a little bit more in my cell phone. But just wanted to highlight some of the things that existed as you open up the phone. After you've chosen to click a photo, for example, on that capture photo video button, let's imagine I hit that center button real quick. I took a photo, and this is the photo I took. Now we have some more options that populate inside of Snapchat. So as we have now taken the photo, we can do a couple things with it. First and foremost, working top down, we can add text, we can draw, make it unique to us in some particular way. Another thing we can do is add a sticker. Basically, a great way to think about a sticker is adding like an image or a GIF on top of the photo that you have just taken. It's an overlaid image or GIF. And again, we'll work through that on my phone if that doesn't make total sense quite yet. The other things you're able to do is actually create a sticker. So you can create specific images that you can overlay. Some of the bigger examples of this that I've seen in politics is people that have created a sticker of, let's say the president's face or your friend's face or, politician's face, anything like that. And you can put that on, anything that you take in the picture, right? You can overlay that on people, right? It can be someone else's face on someone else's body, that type of thing is always interesting to see and has some potential to it. The next thing you're able to do is add a link. So you can actually direct traffic in Snapchat. If you add a link, then people have the ability to click through that link to the website that you are specifying. It's a great thing to do if you're encouraging people to vote, right? It's a great thing to do if you're encouraging people to join an organization or an email list. Just make it as easy as possible for people to continue on their path. And you can add links by doing that right there. And then, of course, you have the timer, which is the last thing on that list right there. And this is going to indicate the amount of time that the person is going to be allowed to view your Snapchat for. Below, there's three options, starting from the bottom left-hand corner. able to download this snap, which basically means you're saving it, right? And I really encourage you to do this, especially as you are snapping more and more, because what it's going to do is build up a repository in your history. So when you look at your Snapchat 1 year from today, and if you save that photo, it's actually going to appear in your memories, and it's a pretty good thing to look at. It's actually more personal than political, but just fun to know and a good thing to know in general. And then, of course, we're able to add to story, just moving right to download. Adding to story allows us to post to not just specific people, but to everybody that follows us. And if our story is public, to everyone in the world, whatever the content that we want to share. And then finally, if we're not adding it to the story in the sense of we're not sending it to everyone, we want to send it to specific people, we'll actually click on that bottom right-hand corner, select recipients, and then from there we can choose the people that deserve to see the snap that we are sending to them. Just a little bit more on the timer, just real quickly. So if we click timer in the bottom, or I guess middle right, which is the last option on that list on the right, this is what's going to populate, which allows you to segment your time. So these are the time increments that typically appear, and you have either 10 seconds or less, or there's no limit. So people can view this as long as they want to view it. Now, I will say generally shorter is better. I would not give too many snaps, that full 10 seconds, that full 8-9 seconds. If it's around 5 to 7 seconds is usually the sweet spot of a good quick snap that's going to disappear in time, because people will decipher or read your message, hopefully, pretty quickly. The other cool thing you can do, like I said earlier, is add text. And there's a couple different types of text that you can add. So if I click that top right-hand corner T for text button, we're able to add text in a couple different ways. Again, I just have 2 of them on the screen. There's many more different ways we can add or stylize this text, I should say. But here's 2 different versions of it. One that has kind of like a closed caption-y vibe, that back, black, that's going to overlay the white text a little bit more predominantly. And then, of course, we can use big text. And there's a couple other things there that exist. But these are pretty cool things that we can do, and we should absolutely experiment with to make it our own unique flair. That is for sure. The other big thing that we're able to do, assuming that we took the picture, right? Well, now we can actually swipe to the left and swipe to the right and apply filters. Now, there is an incredible array of snap filters, and a lot of them have some pretty cool opportunities. And one thing you'll notice, especially in politics these days, is that people will apply these filters or create these filters for political purposes, which is absolutely a good thing to do. And again, we'll walk through what we should be doing and how we can do that. But one thing you can do instantly after you've taken the photo is swipe to the left or swipe to the right and start applying filters. You'll start seeing things that allow you to go in slow-mo or speed up really quickly or apply the location that you are currently existing in. Filters are a good opportunity, and you should absolutely be aware of them. The next big thing. So if I click select recipients, so clicking back here real quickly, actually, we can do it from here. If I click this blue button in the bottom right-hand corner, that allows us to send the snap to specific people. And this is the option that's going to populate. First and foremost, you'll see stories. So you have one more opportunity if you want to add it to your story, which basically means that everyone who follows you on Snapchat can see it. And if your story is public, then everybody in the world can see it. But then Snapchat is going to break up categories below who you should be sending your snaps to or who they think you most interact with. And they do a pretty good job at showing you who you most interact with. Of course, you can see the symbols here. You can see a lot of fire emojis, which means that I keep streaks pretty frequently. These are all very baby streaks. They're much more impressive these days. But yeah, so you can start to see those emojis start to transpire. You see the number and you see the fire emoji. So you know that that streak has lasted for that many days. You see one person with the gold heart, which means that they're my best friend, right? And you see some people that are blushing, which means that we are best friends. We are good friends, but not like the #1 best friends, so to speak. But that's how we can start choosing who deserves to see our snaps. We just have to tap on those profiles and send them accordingly. The other big thing that you have at your disposal, especially as you're adding more people to your Snapchat, is you're able to pull up your menu. And your menu option will populate like this. And again, I'll show you how to pull up the menu in just a moment. But with this, you got the snap code. It works exactly like a QR reader in the sense that someone just has to, with the Snapchat app, point their phone at this graphic. You can actually do this right now and add me if you really wanted to. And from there, it's just going to populate that person and give them the opportunity to add them or you two to be better connected. The other thing that displays here is a score. As you can see, my handle is robots like it always is, but I have a score of 48,273. That score is directly related to how often I'm snapping. So if I send and receive snaps much more often, then my score is going to increase. Now, it's pretty arbitrary, but roughly speaking, if someone is over 100,000, that means they use Snapchat religiously. And if someone is under 100,000, they probably use Snapchat just, regularly. If someone's under 20,000, they probably don't use Snapchat at all. But you'll see kind of the general engagement rates of particular people or how often they are snappy. You can get a really good sense of that just looking at that number. But of course, you can see who added you and accept those friend requests. You can add friends, which means you can seek it out. And if you click My Friends, you can actually view your list of contacts in your phone and add people accordingly, which is always a fun feature. And then inside of this main menu, in the top right-hand corner, right below my power bar, which says 78%, is a bracket. And that bracket is settings. And there's going to be settings that push you to other places inside of Snapchat. And that settings tab has a couple other opportunities in it. In the settings, you can change your username if you made it, off the cuff and you want to make it something different now. Insert your birthday, add your Bitmoji, things like that in your settings. And then, of course, if you click that Adds Friends option, here's the menu that displays as well. Now you can add friends, either people that are actually nearby you, and kind of like Apple AirDrop, if that makes sense for a lot of people. And then, add people by usernames or by your contact list as well, also works. Looking at your stories just real quickly, like I said earlier, there's a lot of cool opportunity that exists inside these stories, but stories are how you share with all your friends exactly what's going on. And not only that, you're also able to see when you click discover other people's stories, and those stories are often from many famous organizations, brands, campaigns, and companies that want to advertise. One thing to note with Snapchat is that people that are on Snapchat, generally speaking, are able to internalize an ad faster than people that are not on Snapchat. Typically speaking, what I teach in my social media classes is that, on average, it takes about 7 impressions for someone to internalize your branding, internalize your messaging. It actually skews a little bit on Snapchat, where people can see something very quickly, and they're mentally trained, if they're using Snapchat a lot, to see something pretty quickly, and then it kind of stays in their head a little bit more. So that's an interesting thing to note from the advertising side of things, that these advertisements are actually quite sticky. They tend to stay in people's minds on Snapchat very, very often. And as you're using Snapchat, like I said, and using your story and applying your story in Snapchat, I really encourage you to post exclusive footage, show event prep if you're making an event, build hype about something that's happening. And of course, if you want to sell things, you can absolutely use your story to sell things as well. And we can do this in a cadence. So I actually have 3 different Snapchats in this example that I'm going to combine together, so to speak, to make a 3-part snap story. So snap number 1 is on the left-hand side is going to be Ronald Reagan. Snap number 2 in the middle, now I'm going to use the same picture, but now I'm going to add a link so they can swipe up to enter their email to win this painting, and I've given them that opportunity. And then I've just done a 3rd snap to really emphasize the whole entire thing, so people are clicking back and forth, hopefully a little bit more engaging of a story. But now we have the link in both places, so in the last 2 snaps, they can easily identify how they can sign up, how they could register, etc. And again, giveaways are not a bad idea to collect email addresses and build further, deeper relationships off of the platform of Snapchat. As we're using stories, I really encourage you to document whatever you're doing, because there's a lot of cool things that people are doing, right? And make sure you tell that story on Snapchat as well as your other social media platforms if you're trying to use it in your holster of social media platforms. And some other things, some opportunities we have is that we could set the scene, the behind the scenes or the wide photo of the group, maybe talk about the highlights, maybe notice the details, or take quality pictures with the VIPs that exist there. There's an incredible array of opportunity, but one of the bigger things here is I would really encourage you to start thinking about how Snapchat can tell your story or tell the story of your event, hopefully creating a little bit of FOMO, right? Fear of missing out for the people that aren't there in the audience with you currently. And a quick activism idea for you all is to create a Snapchat story of your vote, right? What does it look like when you go to your polling location? What does the line look like when you are voting? Are there more Trump supporters? Are there more Biden supporters? Or maybe potentially create a Snapchat story of why you support a candidate or why you support a specific policy prescription. That stuff really matters. And studies after studies show us that people are most impacted by their friends, right? One of my favorite quotes is from a billionaire who said, "Show me your friends and I will show you your future." And that is totally true, first and foremost. But building on that a little bit and adding some Snapchat there is the fact that if you are sharing your thoughts on Snapchat with your friends, with your family, etc., you will be effectively using Snapchat for politics. And really, it's a fantastic way to communicate through videos, through photos, why you support these specific policy prescriptions, why you support this specific candidate. And it is incumbent on us to let people know, right? Because we know that, most people in this class right now, all of us, right, we've got black belts in politics, right? You know that Amy Coney Barrett was confirmed yesterday. You probably knew what the Senate rules were on the whole process, right? But most people, especially Americans that use Snapchat, aren't as trained in politics. And so your voice can carry a lot of weight. Please, please, please use it. Use your voice, especially on Snapchat. And then, of course, on Snapchat as well, there's some other cool opportunities. Number one, I think that is really valuable for politics is geofilters. Now, geofilters are awesome, and they're exactly what they sound. They're filters that are within a specific geographic area, right? And you're able to determine which areas these filters are going to exist in. And we can set them to public for maximum reach. They're fantastic for parties, events, and conferences. Again, creates that FOMO, and it can be very free advertising for all of your needs. So here's actually a geofence that I'm creating right now. So I created a geofence of Leadership Institute, and now anybody in this fence can now add to this story and tell the story for other people that are around this specific area. So this is a free thing to do. There's also geofilters, which we'll get into in just a second, but this is a geofence. And again, we'll pop it up in the app in just a moment. Hopefully that'll make it a little bit more clear, but just to know, this is something that we have at our disposal. The other thing we have that I pointed out earlier is if you saved your snaps, then you have those saved Snapchats as memories, is what they're called on Snapchat. And as they appear, for example, if I sent one last year and it's today now from last year, well, now it's going to populate in my phone. And now I can actually choose to send it to my friends saying, oh, that was crazy last year, right? That was fun. Or, add to my story so other people can see it more broadly. And also they can be downloaded, but it's a great way to capture your life experiences along the way. That is for sure. So here's a couple of mine as a quick thing, a couple of my memories. I think it's me at Trump Tower in Chicago. There's also me in my LI studio, and I used to be much, much fatter around the face. Oh my goodness, I'm looking at myself now. I'm looking at that picture. I don't know. But okay, so let's actually walk through Snapchat, and then we'll finish with some other cool features that exist back in the presentation momentarily. But like I said, there's nothing like the real thing. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to share my screen, share my presentation from my cell phone, and we'll kind of move from there. Hold on one second while I stop this share, making big screen, pulling up the cell phone. I promise I'm not forgetting about everybody. I am literally working right now, which is kind of fun to think about. When I was making this presentation too, and I'm just in Snapchat, I'm like, am I doing the most productive thing today? And they're like, yes, I am. And that's awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with all of you right now. And I'm in the main home screen of my phone, and I'm going to go ahead and click on Snapchat to open it up for all of us here. Hold on one second, I'm just making sure it all works in the same place. It looks like we're doing okay. All right, so I'm going to click on Snapchat. Inside of Snapchat now, of course, let me just point it this way for a second. Okay, okay. I actually didn't think about how live my camera is going to be. So we're actually going to move past this page pretty quickly. But first of all, we see those main opportunities that existed previously. I can go ahead and take a picture. That'll freeze it much better. Okay, so now that I've taken the picture, those options exist. Like I said earlier, of course, in that top type tool, now we can start typing, saying, have a great day. And then, of course, you see there's many other different chat types of fonts. So we have the big text, label, vote. I'll let you all play with those as you see, but as you can tell, there's a lot of them. So don't be afraid to actually start playing with these and maybe finding your own unique style, as you go. The other big thing I'm able to do is I'm able to, with my fingers, I'm actually pinching my fingers closer and further apart. There's two thumbs on the screen right now, and I'm making this text bigger and smaller. And that is another opportunity that exists inside of Snapchat. So I have a great day. Some other cool things that we were pointing out earlier, but now we're doing it live, is that I can add a sticker. So first of all, we saw the draw option. The draw option, we'll just leave that there for sure. Why not? We'll go to the sticker option. From the stickers, now we can add, maybe I wanted people to vote, right? So now people can vote. And I tell people to vote, doing so right there by just adding a sticker But going back to stickers, you can tell there's a lot of cool ones that exist here. I think one of the better opportunities is actually one called GIF here, GIF. And if I click on that, now it's going to be moving GIFs, compliments of the website Giphy, that we can add to our Snapchat at any point. And there's a lot of cool ones, right? And of course, you see my Bitmoji, which is pretty prevalent here. Maybe I'll do Go Vote as well for this activism endeavor. And now we are really encouraging people via stickers to do so. We actually have our text there as well. One other cool thing we have here, again, like I said earlier, is we have our sticker option, not a sticker option, excuse me, our scissors here. If I click on my scissors and actually click on my face, I actually am going to copy this face, and now I can maybe put this on here. It's a miniature version of my face, a little creepy, so I'm actually going to delete that right now. But again, just to show you all the tools that we can do. If I wanted to give people a link to go vote, I could type in a URL right here and add that link. And of course, we have our timer now, so I can set my timer, as long as it needs to be. Awesome. So that's, again, the main interface of Snapchat. I'm actually not going to send this snap, so I'm going to go ahead and press X at the top left-hand corner and go ahead and click discard. But let's go ahead and continue to navigate Snapchat. Like I said, I want to show you some other cool things. Like the other good thing that was pointing out earlier was memories. If we click on memories, we can start to see the memories that I have. I apologize, this is my personal Snapchat, so we might see some things, but nothing too crazy. So you can see 3 years ago, I had a Halloween party where I dressed up as Obama, and it's really funny. And then we also had a staff Halloween party from 3 years ago. This is, I think, PC Culture or PC Baby, something of that nature. And now we can go relive those memories right here at the Leadership Institute. We see Morton Salt, a second close competitor here in this endeavor. But you can start to see those memories start to transpire over time as you play more of them. And then also we have those filters options. So looking on the filters options, we see that the New York Times is paying for one right now, but so can we. And this is why we're teaching this class, is because there needs to be more conservatives that are using Snapchat. That is for sure. But I want to show you some cool features that we have here. I think one of the cooler ones to note is that most people miss, for those of us that have Snapchat already, is actually clicking the scan button. So I click scan in the bottom left-hand corner, and in scan, my face is getting really crumpled. But let me go ahead and show you some cool things. So first and foremost, we have some opportunities. We can press and hold the scan. For any of us that have the youth or have kids, this may be notable for sure. Actually, on the far left-hand corner, I actually press and hold scan and point at any math problem. So I got a math problem on the screen right here for us. If I take this picture, it's actually going to scan it, and it tells me the answer. Pretty interesting to see, but maybe you've heard of that one app called Shazam that was able to say, oh, what music is this? Well, you can do the same exact thing with music and help that song finder happen. And then you can also have a product finder. It's going to do its best to Google the product and point it in your direction if that is the thing that you want to do. Now, besides the scan option, let me click back into filters. Like I said, there's just a whole bunch of options inside of here. You'll see your traditional filters. If you swipe to the right and swipe to the left, and actually I'll go back to selfie mode just for a second so these populate. But there we go. In these sunglasses, I can add anything that I would like. Maybe we're more royalty now, but this is augmented reality, right? This is what Snapchat pioneers and does a fantastic job of, like a really, really good job of. And the other cool things that we have here is this tab. So actually, if I click explore, there's a whole bunch of other filters that weren't the default that now we can add to our collection of filters and lenses inside of Snapchat. One, for example, we've got a dancing Donald Trump. You've seen the dancing hot dog before, but we actually have a dancing Trump one right here ready to take place. And I can actually click and move him around with my thumb wherever I want. And with my two thumbs, I can shrink and bring him bigger and smaller as I bring my thumbs closer together and further apart. It's going to change the size of our dancing Donald here. Oh, I didn't mean to remove that from my favorites, but I did on accident. But as you can tell, there's a whole bunch of them here. And we can see the ones that are obviously trending and things of that nature and kind of move around. No need to go through all those filters. But just wanted to show that was a cool feature that exists. Also, the other cool thing to note is that there's going to be specific lenses and filters that relate to politics often. Both presidential candidates, for example, have Snapchats, and we can use those and utilize those where as necessary. So I have one of my subscriptions already. One thing we're able to do at all times, if I go to my search bar at the top, I can go ahead and just type in, let's do Joe Biden just real quickly, just to share that we'll do both sides here. But now we can click through, Joe Biden's story, things that are happening there. Of course, we can click through Donald Trump's story and everything that's happening as relates to his Snapchat campaign and his initiatives. But also, if we click on their profiles, I'm gonna go ahead and click on Trump's profiles, they'll also display highlights and lenses. And we see that there's a bunch of them here. There's actually the Trump campaign uses much more Snapchat features than the Biden campaign does currently. But we have the highlights here, but we also have lenses. So let's imagine for a second that, we want to do Black voices for Trump. Well, now we have an AR, we have that filter, and that's a hat that automatically populates. As you can tell, there's a whole bunch of other ones that exist. We have the Keep America Great and some other ones as well. And again, as we are doing our activism efforts on Snapchat, these are all things that we can incorporate into our efforts. And again, if you haven't seen those before, I really encourage you to do that. Again, the way we did that was we actually just used the search bar at the top of our main home screen, and then we can start typing in people that would potentially have these Snap Story accounts. And again, these are typically on a presidential level. You won't see a lot of it in lower elections, but it's certainly possible. It just hasn't been adopted quite as much, I suppose. And okay, so some other cool things that exist here is, and I'll just take a picture one more time, just so it like stops like moving so much. Actually, I need to not take a picture. Okay, so in the bottom left-hand corner, like I said before, we have that arrow, and that's going to open up our Snap Map. So in our Snap Map, with 2 fingers again, we can click and move around and see, as you can tell, that I'm actually this guy right here in Clarendon, right next to DC, inside the LI's offices, but we can see where all of our friends are if they've chosen to allow it in their profile. And even more interesting about the Snap Map, let's imagine that you're curious about what's going on, right? Let's say that, let me zoom out really quickly. And as I zoom out, let's say that I want to see what Miami looks like before I go on vacation, or what it's looking like today, and really just wish I was there, maybe potentially. Well, you can see that there's a little bit of a heat map, and the heat map will indicate itself by a bluish greenish color. The lighter the color, the less snaps there are. The darker the color, it'll actually turn more orangish. Then it'll show that more people are taking snaps. So I can actually click on that space. I just tapped it on my phone, and now we can see the public stories that exist right where we typed it in geographically using the Snap Map. So now we're all looking at Miami Beach from 3 hours ago. We're getting a live feed of that as we talk it through. This was from 5 hours ago, or at least posted 5 hours ago, I should say. And pretty cool stuff, and again, let me just zoom out really quickly. This is not just the United States. As you can tell, I have a lot of friends on Snapchat, maybe some of you after this class, let me go back to my Snap Map. But also, this extends beyond the United States into the world. So we see that Saudi Arabia, for example, we've got a real big hotspot right here. Well, if we were ever curious about what's going on in Saudi Arabia today, we can start to see that people on Snapchat are living in Saudi Arabia as well. But again, just wanted to highlight that this really is pretty interesting to see, and a great way to just like sneak in really quickly a view of anywhere you may be going or what's happening, things of that nature. As you open your Snap Map, you also are able to look at your friends and what they've done. So it actually shows recent moves from your friends. Again, you can turn these privacy settings off if you don't want these to be public. These people have chosen to be public, but now you can see people and their travels along the way. We see that Kathleen flew from Tennessee to Denver, Colorado. Someone traveled from Baltimore to Houston, Texas. But it's a great way to keep track of your friends if, again, you're keeping this on a more private level. And then the last thing that I want to show you is just on the right-hand side now, we are actually looking at stories, and now we're in stories. So in stories, of course, we can see my story, for example, from yesterday. I always create a Monday motivation post, 3 and 5 miles, feel really good about that. But in your friends, now you can see all your friends' story right here at the top. You can see your subscriptions, who you're subscribed to, and of course, keep track of what's happening there. And then it's actually going to have a For You section, which is Snapchat's best guess at giving you engaging and entertaining content. My biggest recommendation is to, from the homepage, click that search option and start finding those subscriptions. So for example, I've got, Donald Trump, and I click this one, and all I have to do, let me unsubscribe so I can subscribe again, is click subscribe on that top left-hand corner. And now all of his updates are going to appear in my subscriptions right here. It's just going to take a second to populate because I just unsubscribed and I've resubscribed. But very interesting to note and very interesting to see. So that's Snapchat from a rough angle. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and hop back into the presentation. Hold on one second. Boom, and we're back. Okay, cool. So let me go ahead and share my screen one more time. And sorry, I've got two Zooms up at the same time. Okay. All right. All right. So some last things to note as we are kind of rounding the corner here. Another thing you're able to do, as you were able to see, is that we're able to add Bitmojis, and Bitmojis allow us to add that next level of personalization. This is a separate app that you'll have to download from the App Store or the Google Play Store. Again, totally free. And it's basically just a custom avatar of you, and it's really fun to set up. And I just really encourage you to do that. Once you'll have your own custom GIFs, essentially your own custom images that all look pretty much like you. I mean, this guy kind of looks like me, right? Kind of. I mean, he's more Batman than me, but overall, Bitmojis are a great opportunity. Got a quick question. Great presentation. Thank you. I appreciate that. If we are setting it up for a business or a campaign, what do you recommend we use for the first name and last name? That's a great question. So it really depends on your candidate, but I have two answers for you. If it's going to be managed by the campaign, your comms director, activist, or people that are just friends on the campaign, I really recommend going team as the first name and then the last name of the candidate, team blank. You'll see that actually we have Team Joe Biden. We have actually a Team Trump. That's the way that they've done it. However, I do like the personal take on it. If the candidate is fully integrated and is using Snapchat, and again, I wouldn't necessarily recommend Snapchat as your first social media tool, but if they're using Snapchat, then I recommend actually using their first and last name. But if it's your team, just put team. And that's my answer to that one. The next big thing is creating filters. So like I said earlier, we can create our own on-demand geo filters. Elias just said, am I going to add you back? Okay, well, I will. I just don't want to add anybody before the presentation ended. But actually, let me hold on one second. I got you. Hold on one second. I think you added me. Okay, here we go. We are friends now. We are friends now. So there we go. Yeah. So like I said earlier, this is going to be a really big application in politics. Is you're able to create these geo filters, right? And it costs, roughly speaking, $5 for half a football field. So this is like reasonably priced stuff, right? How many things fit inside of half a football field? A lot of conferences, a lot of hotels, right? So we can use these very effectively for a low cost. And there's a whole bunch of them that we can create. We can, create it for a ugly sweater Christmas party, or we can create it for a political activism event. But if we want to do this, my biggest recommendation, first and foremost, is you have to create the design. So the best place that I recommend creating design is using websites like canva.com. If you've never used it before, I highly recommend you do. Adobe Photoshop is my close second. Then all you have to do is submit the design to Snapchat and pick the geofence location using basically Google Maps, and then you set the time frame. And then Snapchat is going to approve it as quickly as possible. In my experience, this is under 24 hours, but it can sometimes take a half a day. So you definitely want to do this ahead of time, but you can still do it same day, if you are theoretically in a crunch. But usually setting it before you get to a place is definitely the best case of action. And if Snapchat reviews it and says that, maybe you need to make some alterations, or this didn't pass their terms of service agreement, right, then they're going to send it back to you. So just to alleviate all those headaches, just do this ahead of time. But I just wanted to say you could do this fairly quickly if you're in a pinch. And some best practices is that this is an overlay, right? This is always going to appear in that same place that we saw the filters that I just applied, right? They have to take the picture first and then apply the filters in general, or click the filters option at the least if it's going to be more video orientated. So we have to realize that it's going over someone's face, or it's going over the picture that they're taking, right? Which means that we can't take up the whole real estate. But one thing to note that makes Snapchat very convincing to use a geo filter for is that this is one of the only social media apps. This is one of the only apps on your phone that actually takes up your entire phone when you're using it. You make that whole 1920 by 1080 space, right? That whole 9:16 aspect ratio. Most advertisements that you buy on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Google Ads, right? They're going to be a small part of a website, right? Or they're going to be maybe the top line of someone's inbox. But when you're advertising on Snapchat or using geo filters, if they're used properly, you're actually taking up the entire real estate of someone's phone. So there's actually a tremendous amount of opportunity there. That is for sure. Typically speaking, they must be 1080 by 1920. They can be resized as long as they're 9 by 16, but a good rule of thumb, 1080 by 1920. And then, like I said earlier, this can be done in a pinch, but my recommendation is to submit these things at least 24 hours in advance, just to make sure you're in the clear and everything's improved. That is for sure. And one quick activism idea for all of you before we move on to the next thing is to create a custom geofilter for a conference, event, or voting location, right? Let's imagine just for a second, theoretically, that someone's going to go vote on election day, right? And they're in line and they're bored on their phones and they open up Snapchat because they might be between the ages of 18 to 24. Well, this could be one more avenue, one more arm reach in our GeoTV efforts to reach these voters even when they're at the polls. And that is a very interesting opportunity along the way as a result of next week. Some other big things to note is that we could definitely create some geofilters. Let's say we're going to CPAC next year, right? Well, we can create a geofilter for CPAC, which tends to skew a little younger. And from there, we can reach these youths with our message a little bit. Actually, maybe just as effectively as if we just tabled at the event, right? So tremendous ideas when it comes to geofilters. I really encourage you to look at that as an opportunity in the future. And let me escape this one real quickly. If you ever want to create these geofilters, all you have to do is go to snapchat.com. And actually let me put snapchat.com in the chat. And then I also have the link for, if you ever wanted to create these filters, and this is beyond the purview of a 1 hour class on Snapchat, but you can actually create these augmented realities that we were seeing earlier before using Snapchat's own essentially ecosystem. And it's pretty easy to learn. It does take some time. It is definitely for the technologically inclined, I will say. So if you haven't coded before, then you probably would have trouble with this. But if you have, you probably figure it out and pick it up pretty quickly. But that's also a really cool opportunity for the digitally savvy activists. Is you can actually create custom Snapchat lenses for your disposal, which is really fun to note. And I have a couple questions. So let me just make sure I answer these as well before moving on. One question that I got is, how will it show up on Snap, your first name and last name? If so, is it a company Snap site? Do you recommend the business name in the first name, last name spots? Yeah, so for your account, answering that question was on, it should be, how do you use the first name, last name? Yeah, so it's going to show up as first name, last name. So if my first name was, Stephen Rowe, it's going to show up as Stephen Rowe. If my first name was Team, Rowe, then it's going to show up as Team Rowe. That's going to appear everywhere. And then you can have a unique username as well, right? That's going to be your name, but there's also your username. So my name on Snapchat is Stephen Rowe, but my username is Robots, right? ROWEBOTZ. And so we can sync those together. We can leave those apart. That's going to be at your discretion, but that's what's going to appear, roughly speaking. And do I recommend using the business's name in the first name and last name spots? It depends. It really does. And again, based on the business that it is. But again, I would probably follow that same rule of thumb that I applied earlier, in the sense that if maybe it's more of a business that has a clear first and last name, then go down that path, right? If I was creating a Snapchat, for example, for a Leadership Institute, I'd probably go Leadership Institute, so they'd be connected, and maybe, at Leadership INST as my, username. So again, there's a difference between a display name and a username, but yeah, that's the general direction I would go. I would try and fit it all, if possible, like I just described. So ours fits pretty well, but again, it depends on your business and how that would work. But maybe need some light working, but you can definitely get it. Brian just asked, is there a risk that Snapchat deplatforms conservatives? So that happened like Facebook and Twitter? That is a fantastic question. The answer is there's a tremendous risk of it. Yes. In fact, Donald Trump in May of this year, the Trump campaign was launching ads on Snapchat, and Snapchat actually pulled away the Trump campaign's ability to advertise on their platform as a whole, simply citing the fact that they were inciting violence with their snaps. Of course, that's ridiculous. I know that's ridiculous, but they're playing politics, so it definitely exists as a threat. I will say it likely won't happen by deplatforming, but they may stop you from advertising, and that's really the biggest threat. Really, Snapchat, like I said earlier, is really generally one-to-one communication. And so there's really no vested interest in Snapchat fully deplatforming everyone, but they will prevent your ability to reach other people in their Discover tab or through advertising. Things like that are certainly an inherent risk that we have to mitigate as conservatives using social media. And then the other big question is, do I need a credit card on file Can you accept payments on Snap? Can you take a poll on Snap, like SurveyMonkey? Yeah, so to create a advertisement, yes, you do need to add your credit card to pay for it, of course, and you pay for it ahead of time, which is a good thing to note. And then when you say, can you accept payments on Snap? The answer is yes, you absolutely can. And I actually have that in my slides as we kind of move forward a little bit. We're on SnapMap, but I kind of show that to us in person. So I'm going to just fast forward through SnapMap to answer the second part of your question, which is Snap Cash. So it works a lot like, again, I'm going to compare it to another popular app that exists out there. It's called Venmo. Other people have used ones called Zelle. Other people have used things called, what is it called? Oh my goodness, I'm totally spacing it. It's like Cash App. That's what it is, Cash App. And that same principle, those types of functions exist inside of Snapchat. So you can send money, you can receive money from your friends, you can ask for donations on Snapchat for sure. I will say that it's pretty new territory. It's definitely a new frontier. I don't know the full success of asking for donations via your Snap Story, receiving it via Snap Cash, and that's effectiveness overall, but it's certainly possible from a theory perspective. The thing to note, though, if you're sending or receiving, you must, as you indicated earlier, and you're asking that question, yes, you must have a debit card linked to receive, and you can link your debit card. So it doesn't have to be a bank account. It could be a credit card as well. So you can stay pretty isolated, which is good, and stay pretty secure with your cash, which is very important. And then it happens very quickly. So again, like Venmo, like Cash App, like Zelle, the transactions actually occur pretty quickly. It's usually under 24 hours that someone's going to receive the money that was sent to that particular recipient. And if you're ever curious about how you use Snap Cash, it's actually available in your settings. Again, all we have to do is click that bracket in the top right-hand corner of our main home screen where that picture of us exists or our stories exist. You'll see that settings tab. Click on that settings tab and scroll down a little bit and you'll see one called Snap Cash. And you can choose the username who you want to send Snap Cash. And just a cool opportunity from there is you can send them cash, right? The other good things that exist, and we were hinting at this earlier, search, right? I really encourage you to use search to connect with people, subscribe to people, and also see what's going on around the general ecosystem. So you can look for, if you just want a pickup, let's say that you're bored and you need a break, you can look for puppies on Snapchat's search function and probably find some very cute puppies, right? But we can use this politically as well. The other thing that we can do is there's a multi-snap feature where we can take multiple snaps in a row of 10-second increments. And then once we've collected all these snaps, we can now edit them inside of Snapchat and just essentially choose which ones we want to send, maybe which ones we want to discard, capture the big moments, things of that nature. So it's certainly an opportunity for you to use multi-snaps. The last slide I have for you all, just some big takeaways on Snapchat. Happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. But people on Snapchat can interact with your brand, your campaign, your organization in a very engaging way. Now, I will say, I don't generally recommend Snapchat as your leading social media charge, especially for people in politics. However, as we can tell, there is tremendous application in this space. And I would argue that conservatives are underutilizing this as an opportunity. So really encourage us to play more offense on Snapchat if we have the time, if it's right for our brand and our message, etc. The other big thing is mass messaging has never been more affordable. Snapchat is certainly making that the case. By adding something to your story, making it public, people could theoretically now click on their Snap Map and see what's going on, and you could be the teller of the story, right? So a tremendous amount of opportunity. And of course, it is a powerful, powerful branding tool. And if you take pretty much anything else from Snapchat, is that traditionally Snapchat is going to help elevate or communicate your brand. That really is the main power inside of Snapchat, again, because it's mostly a communication app, it's mostly a photo and video sharing app, and it's a powerful branding tool. And so if you already have an audience, then this could be incredibly relevant for you. And if you don't have an audience, then you can start to build that audience, of course, but this is an incredibly powerful branding tool ultimately. Awesome. So I got a couple last quick questions before we wrap up. Thank you for saying I rock. Can you have more than one Snap account? Yes. Is there a reason, like your professional versus personal? So that's a good question. Typically, I would only go organizationally. I would not have a professional Snapchat and a personal Snapchat on, that is me centric. But I would have a professional Snapchat if it was an organization, right, that I was managing. Like maybe, I don't what's an organization's name? Like Students for Life, right? If I was managing Students for Life, then I would have a professional one and I have my personal one, right? But if it's just me, then I recommend one solo account for one individual. And it just seems cumbersome. Yes, it does. That's why I recommend one for sure. And if I have if I have products I sell, would I want two different Snap accounts? Generally speaking, no. Like I said earlier, really want to keep you in the area of just one Snap account. I mean, already considering Snapchat in your social media arsenal means that you likely have some extra space or your brand really fits well with Snapchat. However, anytime that you're adding more accounts, you're always making it much more complicated. So my general recommendation almost always is to keep it simple. That means having one account if possible. But as I just shared, there are some examples where there'd be two different ones for sure. But yeah, great. I hope this training was really awesome. This is the digital download series. It's happening every Tuesday.